College football's problems are only going to increase unless they get a commissioner to make things right. Nick Saban is the man for the job.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day each and every day right here on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. We are brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Today, we're going to be talking about birthday cake. The flavor is back. No fork needed. Vanilla cake flavor. Caffeinated kick. No sugar. It is party time. Order now at 5 Hour Energy or at Amazon.com. We are going to be getting to the governing of college football's playoff later in the show. I think Saban would be a great person for this to at least provide input, but I also need your input. Which person or persons do you think should be involved to help figure out, is it a 16-team playoff? It is a 24 or whatever. We know it's going to expand because money is the answer. We'll talk about that later on in the show. Enforceable rules. That's kind of important. Right now, do you think college football has enforceable rules? I don't, because nobody's getting in trouble for really anything. Saban over the top of that, we'll get into. Tampering, just in general, I want to be very specific. What is a guideline that we can use? What are some of the questions about tampering? That's really important because we can't have guys enrolled at schools getting pulled off rosters. That's just no good. So with that in mind, here's my overall take on why it's Nick Saban that should be college football's commissioner. He's respected. If Nick Saban calls you or somebody on your staff or in your office, that phone call will be received and it will be respected. People will listen. Right now, which person or individuals from the NCAA or any other governing body with college football do you think major head coaches like a Lane Kiffin, a Marcus Freeman, a John Summerall, anybody else in college football, who do you think they really respect that works for the NCAA as it relates to enforcement? Now, they're going to give a political answer on TV or a radio spot, but are they really concerned? Not really. Are they really irritated when somebody does something against them? Of course they are. But it's a two-way street. Almost every single school in major college football that I've dealt with, and it's pretty much all of them, they are pulling players from other rosters. They are sending out feelers to find out, hey, how can we get this kid after the season's over? That has to change. Again, if you take nothing else from this podcast, Nick Saban would be the right person. It's been discussed before, but we need to bring it back up because this January defined once again why college football is a mess. We need to have parameters, and there must be enforceable rules. So, to that end, here are the points that I want to get into. These are the 7 things that I want to talk about. The 7th is just a statement, really, but the first 6 are straightforward. Number 1, I'm very steadfast with, and this is where it's going to get really awkward because eventually you got to agree on this, but here goes. Tampering, automatic, keyword, automatic loss of scholarships, coaching fine, school fine. It has to be not one of those, not 2 of those, all 3 of those. And if it's somebody in the back office that's doing it, same deal. You need to be able to, at any time, do a search of somebody's phone or their email and have people that are directly doing it at schools because there's no reason to believe any of them at this point. What is tampering? I'm talking about guys physically on a roster. No doubt they are enrolled and you are trying to get them to come to your school. There are a lot of different ways it can happen. We have obvious scenarios that it's happened in the last 6 months over and over again. There must be loss of scholarships because if you have loss of scholarships, that means there's a loss of money. That means the TV deals get hammered. That means people are embarrassed. That means careers or at least temporarily derailed. Yes, it has to be extreme because right now it is absolutely not enforceable because it's just not being enforced. Name one school that's been hit. Name one. It's pathetic. The NCAA's toothless inability to do anything or even try is embarrassing. Number 2, NIL revenue sharing combined with collectives. This is a very murky subject, and I could do 20 shows just on this, but I'm going to keep it succinct. There is the $22 million pot that is NIL money that is rev sharing. Okay. Most of that will go to schools like, LSU, Colorado, Michigan State, whatever, the big P4 schools. The lion's share goes to football. But there is a so-called NIL clearinghouse for these deals, etc. Look, LSU, I'll just use them as an example. They just signed 40 players with all these high-end guys, like 3 out of the top 5 portal players, by some accounts, went to LSU. There is no way they're under that. However, collectives are part of it. They help pay and etc. It's a way around. Secondarily, as you look at number 3 for those of you listening live or watching live or later on YouTube, what about Nike schools like LSU's a Nike school? There are a handful that they have 10 athletes, some are football, some are not, where they get money directly from Nike. These are advantages. There has to be consistency. If Nike does it for those schools, I have no problem with it, but they have to be able to spend the exact amount that Nike is. So if it's through rev sharing or something else, some other school that doesn't have that, to be fair, they have to have it. So I'm combining 2 and 3 here. And to put it in one big collective bundle, there can't just be definitive cheating with how much money you're spending, because they're just shifting it over to collectives, who signs it, who doesn't. They're moving money around. It's basically like organized crime. And that's why they began the RICO Act in like the late 60s, early 70s to get the mob. That's basically what this is. Certain schools are moving money around so they can spend more to get more athletes and hold a definitive advantage. Somebody like Nick Saban over the top of this, you would have more teeth, you would have more consistency, and there would, again, it goes back to number 1, you would be able to enforce loss of scholarships. Number 4, enforcing the transfer portal window. I'm getting ahead on this one a little bit. There are a few guys that have kind of went through the window and then it didn't work out. They didn't know what they were going to, and they left later. There's been a couple of those situations, and it's going to happen more because we don't have a spring transfer window. For those you don't know, January 2nd through the 16th, that was the window, and that was it for the year. The next one is next January. But what happens when a major program loses their quarterback this spring? They're screwed. Well, too bad. What happens when their star corner gets hurt? Too bad. You can't be the exception, because then it's not going to work. One team can't get a portal guy and then nobody else. It does not work. Same thing with number 4. It has to be just like tampering, because eventually it's going to be that anyway. Automatic loss of scholarships, coaching fine, school fine, and on top of it, that player cannot be eligible for that season. They have to put it into every contract for every single player that if you do this, they have to sign it and they have to initial it. Their guardian, if they're a 17-year-old or whatever, everybody, their lawyer, their representative, all must sign this piece of paper. You cannot transfer after spring practice and play immediately. Now, if you want to transfer and sit out, that's your business. I'm talking about immediate eligibility. And again, just to be clear, automatic loss of scholarship, coaching fine, school fine. If you try to get somebody to do it, whether they sit out or not, all of those things must be enforceable. Number 5, hiring Nick Saban would be the start, but how about his enforcement team? This is a murky area. How do you do this? Who's involved? Because bias is going to be not just in the midst of the process, it's going to be permeating all the way through, really. It's hard not to have somebody that's an AD. They're going to have bias towards the conference and or the school or schools that they were associated with. You need to have some people outside of the college football world, but let me be very clear. Zero people in this very key world. Politics, 0. They are only going to do things that help them. No politicians. Absolutely not. Number 6. What about the NCAA's involvement with Coach Saban? He should work with them. I think this is the easiest one. And I don't think it should be that difficult to understand. If you have a situation where there's an enforcement situation and it's murky, at least use him as somebody that you could gain some knowledge from. He's a phone call away. Somebody on his staff that he really wants to be involved, that maybe worked for the NCAA at one point or worked at Alabama or LSU or Michigan State, one of the stops he had. Maybe it's an NFL person that just understands, because the NFL still has rules about poaching too. All of those things are important. And while I'm at it and on the fly here, the NFL model is what I'm really trying to get. If you try to poach, they pull draft picks. They are not playing. The NCAA needs to be that way. So I really think it would be a great idea to get several former NFL people to be involved with Saban's team. And finally, number 7, this is just a statement and just something to kind of go through your mind. With the playoff likely expanding, Saban and his staff should be involved with the decision-making for how, for when, for why, etc. He doesn't have to be the final decision maker, but I think it would be very wise for Nick Saban to at least be involved consistently. He's the greatest coach in college football history, and he's somebody who looks at the world through a pretty narrow view on just making sure you stay on track. And the NCAA is off the tracks. Let's get it back on. That's very important. When we come back, we'll get into the chat. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the rules, why it may or may not work. I'm going to talk about the other side here. Those are steadfast, my thoughts there. But I know there are some holes you can poke in them. I'm going to bring those up next right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at a very specific part of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be the sleepers. I've got a little of both on my opinion. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and the only one that's going to win, and maybe it's a favorite, maybe it's not, that is up to you. But here are my takes. I'm a very traditional guy with flavors. I like grape, I like cherry, I like strawberry. It's not that difficult. However, there are some sleepers and things that I like to go to. Sour apple is a really good one. Peach mango, strawberry watermelon. They have so many flavors with 5 Hour Energy. It's not even funny. And one of my all-time favorites, especially for snow cones, is blue raspberry. I'll take that in anything. It's a sweet and tangy flavor with a taste and a nature couldn't make, but should have. To be honest with you, blue raspberry might be my all-time favorite, and I think that would be my pick as the number 1 seed. Find your new flavor at 5 Hour Energy shots, available at 5hourenergy.com or over at Amazon. We are also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you that chance to turn that dream into reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here is how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, 2 people, 2 flights, 2 tickets, the entire experience. All you have to do is get involved. And now, not only can you pick your cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club down below in the description. The best part about it is the following. No doubt about it. If you are an audio listener like I am, the Portal Podcast, you can get all your feeds. It doesn't matter if you use Spotify, Apple, Podbean, Amazon Music. It does not matter. No ads. $5 a month or $50 a year. Down in the description below, it will give you more details. And there is a Discord. Check out the Everydayer Club. All right, now here are the holes that I see with this. Like any set of rules, any commissioner, anybody that is granted extra access, people argue. But if we can't come up with Saban, what are we doing? Like, at some point, you have to pick somebody. They want to argue about, oh, he's an SEC guy. Well, he coached in the Big Ten, too, and he's a Midwest guy. He's from West Virginia. He lived in Ohio. He's lived in Michigan. He's somebody that wants to see the sport progress, and he's got more money than he knows what to do with. He's working on ESPN College Game Day. He doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to do it. But he likes football. He wants to be around it. He wants to be involved. Why not make Nick that guy? He doesn't have to rule with an iron fist. It's just implementing things. And in special cases, maybe he does come with a final judgment. I'm not saying he's the complete enforcement arm of the NCAA. That's not the point. But specifically with tampering and this and that, it's got to go. It's got to go. It's the only way we're going to have any common decency in college football. Same thing with the NIL Clearinghouse. They're obviously not enforcing this. Everybody's scared to death of being sued. That NIL Clearinghouse was a bunch of garbage. I knew as soon as they said, oh, Congress is going to help with this, and that. Nobody wants to put their toes down on somebody because that's about votes. Politicians, it doesn't work. It doesn't. If they'd say, especially like, let's say, state of Tennessee, if you're a politician in Tennessee and you vote against what the states said that Tennessee can do, that they won't be under any ramifications for the NIL Clearinghouse and all that, you're out. They do not care. Bias is 100% of the problem here. 100%. Get the politicians out of it. Saban's retired. He's rich. He doesn't care what you think. Make him the person. You want to be mad at him? He doesn't care. He probably doesn't even read his email. He does not care. That's just my opinion. Now, finally, how they select a staff that he would have, and he would obviously need to have a major say in it, but there needs to be layers to it. That's the most complex part. I don't really have an answer. And if you want to give your thoughts on it, fire away. I'm not sure there's a perfect idea, but it is something to think about. All right, here we go. I'm going to get in the chat a little bit, see what we got. Salty, how does your leisure time differ in Gulf Shores versus prior to where you move? I do the same things, man. It's just warmer here, and I got the beach. It's pretty straightforward. Nick Saban seems to be enjoying his time in the media. Would a commissioner role appealed enough to him to make change? Could he still do both, or would it appeal to him at all? I think it would, because I know the Trump administration's talked about it. He's went and met with Trump about it. How that would work, though, and all the political sides of it, that's what I'm just talking about here in this segment. Just a moment ago, I'm not sure why it hasn't already happened, but my guess is there's some minutia because certain people don't want him. They want somebody else that's, again, here's that key word, bias. Either he wouldn't be biased enough for them, or they're afraid that they would be on the wrong end of his bias. Somebody's going to be biased everywhere. There is no perfect, but that's my guess. Salty, in the similarity in Saban and Satan, purely coincidental, or is there more to it? I don't think he's a bad guy. He's just super competitive. Would college football commissioner Saban impose penalties on Bama as freely as to other schools with similar violations? And more importantly, would non-Alabama fans believe he would? Nobody's going to believe anybody right out of the gate. This is just your best option because he is an expert. This idea that there's anything remotely fair with college football needs to go right out the window. There is zero. Everything, as I stated earlier in the show, is 100% bias. What is fan short for, Salty? Fanatic. Is fanatic anything close to rational? No, it is the polar opposite. It is the antonym. Therefore, we need to not worry about that. Who is more of an expert than Saban? That's all I'm saying. Nobody's going to like it unless it's an Alabama fan. But if you hired somebody else, they're only going to like the school that individual represents. There is no fair. But he's the one that has the most expertise. And that's why the guardrails can at least be somewhat in play. As I noted a minute ago, the people underneath them, how they do that, there needs to be people from each conference, etc. People that have ties, a business owner, maybe a famous person in Charlotte because they started their own business and are a billionaire or something. How do you keep things working? Bring that person in. Just no politicians. None. Absolutely, unequivocally, no politicians. Katie, I think Nick Saban knows what's wrong with college football and would fix it. Today, CFB retired him. Man, that is true. Nick left because he hated all the new rules and stuff and didn't think it was going to work. Katie, Duke had the opportunity to depose Darian Mensah and expose the names all involved in that shady, unethical BS and didn't. They blew it. Not exactly, because they did the exact same thing the year before. Remember, Mensah was at Tulane. Duke 100% tampered to get him too. And I guarantee you the people at Miami made it clear. If you say anything about us, we're coming after you for the stuff last year. it's a two-way street, unfortunately, for Duke. Katie, a $10 million salary cap would limit the number of portal players coming in. An excessive number of sought-after portal players would trigger an investigation. Based on what we're hearing, 10 million wouldn't touch it, though. That's the problem. Like, it's not even in the stratosphere. 30 million is kind of the bottom end of where you need to be to compete for a title. Salty, if you could create your own 5-hour energy flavor, what would it be? Something with berry. Blue raspberry is one of my all-time favorites, like I said a minute ago. Something with berry. That's a great question, though. They got every flavor at 5-hour energy. Katie, the portal and all the tampering has soured me on football, college football. It's not just the game I loved anymore. I'm also sick of these unethical head coaches that couldn't win 7 games a year without portal and tampering. I get it. Salty, can Nick Saban not rule with an iron fist? Yeah, because they can just put the guardrails in. He only gets so much power. He's not going to be like the head coach. He's just going to be one arm of it. That way he can't have too much, or whoever it is. It doesn't have to be Saban. Katie should be on commissioner's board to keep everyone in line, says Salty. Yeah, there's some truth in that. When we come back, I just want to make some final comments here on the college football tampering, getting Saban involved. That is next, right here on the College Football Podcast with Locked On.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. It was a heavyweight showdown between number 3 South Carolina and number 7 LSU, and the Gamecocks rose to the occasion. South Carolina secured a hard-fought 79-72 victory to stay atop the SEC standings, using a balanced offensive attack to outlast the Tigers. Tessa Johnson led the way with 21 points, while Raven Johnson added 19. Medina Okot dominated the paint with a double-double, finishing with 12 points and 17 rebounds, while Joyce Edwards chipped in 10 points to round out the scoring. With the statement win, the Gamecocks now turn their attention to a road matchup at number 23 Alabama on Thursday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
So what's next for college football and everything that's moving forward? Obviously, the playoff is the big discussion. Big Ten wants 24, the SEC 16, if you believe all the scuttlebutt. I don't know why we wouldn't. This is another area I kind of touched on a little bit, and I just want to expand here and use it as a barometer. Saban could be involved with that, and anything else that comes down the pipe that is in this ever-changing landscape of college football. It doesn't have to be Saban. That's just my recommendation, and I think the government likes that as well, which is ironic. I hardly ever agree with any government that we have. But that being the case, there also needs to be guardrails for whenever Nick or whoever that person leaves, who's next? They need to have a situation where it's more ability to just transition smoothly. There hasn't been much seamless in college football in a long while. It's nothing but chaos all the time. We need people that want to be involved, that understand there's going to be negativity with it. Again, here's that word, the most important word in college athletics, bias. There is no such thing as favor in college football. It's just 100% bias. Favor is like a little bit. No. Bias. Fans do not care anymore if they cheat. They do not care how they got there. They do not care if their rep blew the call. It is a one checkbox situation. Did we win? That's the only question. And there's 2 boxes, yes or no. They only care if it's not yes, they're angry. You're going to have to step on toes. And again, that's why you need politicians out, because people will vote politicians out if they don't do what they want for that school. So again, there's no place for the politicians. Having stated that, what other individuals do you think besides Saban would be good in some capacity? Urban Meyer would probably be one. There are others as well. Like when Willie Fritz retires, the head coach at Houston, I could see him being a great fit. Signetti would be another good fit. I can't imagine There are 100 guys out there. It's probably less than 50 in the United States that I would want, but maybe it's somebody that's outside of football that needs to be one of the top 2 or 3. That would be a good idea too. Maybe an old college basketball, because that's the same deal, coach. That would be fine. But we've got to get people in there that have different opinions. And there's never going to be 100% agreement. Again, bias. But that's okay. College sports are complex. They're never going to be straightforward. And that's why we enjoy them. There's intrigue. Think about college football. It's regional in some ways, but it's played across the country. The fans in certain areas, they enjoy their traditions, but they love going to see other people's cities, their food and all that. It brings people together, and there's still going to be conflict all the way through, even though they enjoy it. It's an odd mix. There's nothing else like it. College basketball has a little of that too. However, we can't control the bias completely without somebody that's respected. So whether it's Saban, whether it's Myers, somebody else, we must get someone that can help with the playoff, that can help with tampering, that when they bring a ruling, when they go to the podium, they're not going to be laughed at. Like, what does this guy know? And if it's a woman, I don't care either. It could be a college basketball coach. A women's college basketball would probably be good to have towards the top. Why not have somebody for the female sports? This is part of it too, because they need a voice. They probably need multiple underneath that structure. Again, if it's Saban, that's my pick. You should absolutely have that for Title IX reasons, etc. Avoid being sued. And some lawyers that have been involved in Title IX. You've got to have a lot of parameters, but all of it still comes back to tampering. There has to be harsh penalties. Loss of scholarships, the coach or the administrator gets some kind of penalty financially, in the school gets a penalty financially. What those exactly are, I don't know, but just as an idea, if you tamper, I think you should lose 3 scholarships minimum. There is no second strike. First strike, you get the hammer. Once that happens, tampering go away. That's the way it is. We need to have that kind of intimidating factor to get our sport back on the guardrails and not be embarrassing anymore. Every time I see one of these dumb rules not be enforced, like they just kind of skate around it a little bit to begin with, and then they don't even enforce that, I just laugh, but then I'm like, my God, this is what I cover. It's obvious they're cheating, but nobody does anything at the NCAA because they suck. There has to be somebody outside the NCAA, because they're just worried about getting sued every day, that has the cojones to say something, to stand by it once they set those rules, to actually do it, and that's it. It has to be a hard line. So I'm not really sure if everybody understands just how hard that is, but there are very few people willing to get in front of that fastball and take that one, take their base, if you will. But if we don't, it's going to be tough. Let's see here. Katie, if you can't compete without tampering, you don't deserve a title. 100%. Katie, Salty, I just think you can't do it the right way. You don't deserve to be doing it. Oh, there's another good one. Alonzo Highsmith, says Katie. That would be a good one. He was a former Miami player, played in the NFL, at Houston Oilers. Yeah, he was a hell of a player. Salty says, Katie, you are correct. Dawn Staley, Candace Parker, those would be fine by me. Those are a couple of great women's players. Absolutely. Salty, Urban Meyer could get chair the leisure time behavior subcommittee. He could chair the leisure time behavior. That would be interesting considering the Florida thing, but nonetheless. Jim Tressel, that's a possibility. I'm trying to think of some other names. I forget who's the head coach now at Michigan, was at Utah. When he retires, he'd be somebody I'd be interested in. There are just so many people that are involved that it would be very touchy, because while they're great, they're very definitively an SEC guy or Big 12, whatever. That's the only thing. I just don't think there's much you can do about that. I'd like somebody that has NFL experience, if at all possible, at least a few years. Saban obviously has numerous NFL years. He coached with Belichick as his DC of the Cleveland Browns in the early 90s. I really don't know too many other people, but college basketball coaches, men and women, baseball coaches, people in the banking industry, investors, and people that are used to really strict guidelines, people on Wall Street, probably would be a good idea to have somewhere in that group. Dim Tressel is a very cerebral guy, Katie. Yes, he is. Tony Bennett, that's a good one. Retired UVA basketball coach, not the entertainer. That's a really good. Tony's a lot like Tressel in a lot of ways, personality-wise. Good point here. Highsmith has GM experience. Any GMs or assistant GMs from the NFL level, I think, would be very good. And if you don't go that route, there's still, again, it could be somebody that was the executive vice president at Citibank. Somebody, again, they are used to guardrails. And somebody that has an interest in college athletics, maybe they played. Maybe they were just somebody that played at Liberty. They weren't P4, but they were a wrestler or something. Like, you have to have different voices for the Olympic sports, the women's sports, for Title IX, all of that. But that person at the very top probably needs to be an elite coach, because it'll have the most teeth when they come down with the ruling. Thank you very much for checking out the Portal Podcast again today. It's been another fun show. We will see you again soon here on the Portal Podcast.